This quiz today, it said the 4 cardinal signs of inflammation. What are the signs of inflammation? Red, swelling, heat, and pain. Good. What is lymph? What you put, Dakota? It's the fluid that's bathing our cells. That's exactly right. So you might have said it in some different ways, but that's fine. And where does it come from? Blood plasma. And where does it return to? The blood. Already. But it returns to the blood, doesn't it? What's the function of lymph node? Filter lymph. It's to filter lymph, isn't it? The complement system is composed of many specialized proteins which, if activated, will have 3 potential outcomes. Who would like to tell me those 3 outcomes of the complement protein activation? Got inflammation, opsonization, and cytolysis. If you didn't know that now, make sure you know it before this next test. You will be asked that. The 3 outcomes: inflammation, opsonization, and cytolysis. Very good. So what's the function of interferon? Who would like to say what they put? Who feels confident about what they put? What's the function of interferon? Nobody wants to volunteer what they put for that? Okay, Dakota's like 5,000 up here. It's to do what, Dakota? It's not to limit the immune response. Okay. It's to limit the viral infection. So interferons are produced. These are chemical molecules that are produced by cells that have been invaded by viruses that actually communicate with neighboring cells to protect them. So it limits a viral spread and it limits the viral thing. Doesn't limit your immune response. It helps. It's part of your immune response. Part of it. Okay, name 2 types of specific immunity. They are humoral and cell-mediated. Humoral and cell-mediated. Now name 3 kinds of special types of white blood cells that are needed and give their respective functions. This was quite a comprehensive quiz, wasn't it? But we had a lot of information since our last quiz. So I hope you put B lymphocytes, and I hope that you put that they become activated to, maybe you said, produce antibodies, which they do. Plasma, they turn into plasma cells that produce antibodies. Maybe you put CD8 cells, or call them cytotoxic Ts, and you said they're the ones in cell-mediated. Maybe you put CD4 cells and call those the helper cells to the entire specific immunity, plus some non-specific immunity. And maybe you would even, somebody used the suppressor T cells, and what's their function? It's really to control that response. It's to control the specific immunity response, so it's not over the top. Because over the top can do what? Cause damage to our own tissues. Right. What class of antibody is able to cross the placenta? It predominates in our blood. It is going to be seen in secondary exposures. What class of antibodies are they? IgG. Y'all are being humble. You're just not. IgG. What class of antibodies first produced in the initial exposure? IgM. That's exactly right. When making, hey, by the way, like all of these, I know that you'll have multiple choice questions on the next test. So just use this as if you know you need to beef up your notes or whatever. Just use this for that. When making your own antibodies in response to disease or being given an immunization, this is known as what type of immunity when you make your own antibodies? It's called what? Active immunity. And when you get mother's milk or you're getting something in the form of immunoglobulin like shots, that's called passive immunity. So active versus passive immunity. You got 10 points for being here. And then you got 2 bonuses. So I hope you spent some time with those. What's acromegaly?
Hypersecretion of growth hormone.
Hypersecretion of human growth hormone, and it's in adulthood. So it's going to lead to the abnormal growth of those irregular bones, and also it's going to change how fat deposition happens and whatnot. So that's what acromegaly is. The onset is in adulthood. Where's human growth hormone released from? Secreted from? Pituitary, right? Okay, so y'all, that was a hormone question. Then name 3 types of tonsils. You'll need to know them for the test. They are the palatine, the pharyngeal, which people call adenoids, and the lingual, right? Did anybody know that? That y'all knew that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Good. So, were these fair questions? Were they? Okay. So, when you get these back, you can study those for your next test. Use these quizzes to study for your test, right? I considered all that kind of significant. Do y'all have anything for me this morning before we get started? Do you have any questions, concerns, anything? Okay. You guys get a break next week. Are you so happy? I know you must be so happy.
3 papers to write them, right?
Okay, because it gives you the opportunity to write 3 papers. Okay, so it gives you that chance. No, so I remember that. I remember those things. So look, you guys do get a break, and I'm not going to have anything to do for you the Monday you come back. So I don't want to take even your Sunday evening for your break. I want you to have it. Okay, so there will not be any quizzes or anything on the Monday that you return. Fair enough? All right. What you say? Okay, but just because you guys, whatever, you might want to be keeping up with this, because soon, very soon, after we finish the respiratory system, we'll have a test on just the lymphatic and respiratory, right? So you do maybe, want to keep reviewing this a little bit. All right, now I think we stopped with hypersensitivity, and this is where I want to pick up today. We said what an amazing thing our immune system is. What an amazing thing that is. But what we also know is that immunology, the study of the immune system, when we think about immunology, we realize that we have to also understand that sometimes we can have too little of a response, but we can have too much of a response as well. And both of those things can be very, very bad, because, we talked about in any living system where balance is key. And even when something seems like a wonderful thing, like your immune system, having too much of it is usually not going to be good at all. So let's talk about some hypersensitivity. Sometimes when the immune system is actually going to be what's causing trouble, because it is actually going to be hyperactive, if you will. So when we think about the types of hypersensitivities and that excess of this immune reaction, there's different, they actually classify this by types. So type 1 is the one that's so common. It's the allergies that you think of. Is there anybody in here that doesn't know anyone who has allergies? Right. Everybody knows somebody who has allergies. And actually, probably many of you all have allergies. And, it's a very kind of typical thing. So sometimes it's just annoying. So in some people, it can be just cause this annoyance where they're going to have maybe, congestion and runny eyes and itchy eyes and whatever. And it can be just a little bit annoying, but can it also be serious? Yeah, so some people can have it enough that they end up having respiratory issues. So I would want you all to know that asthma is an actual type 1 hypersensitivity disorder. It is one of the major causes of COPD, and I need you all to know what COPD stands for. It stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And I would want you to know that asthma is a serious illness. And what asthma is a reactive airway disease. And we're about to, in the next chapter, look at the anatomy of the respiratory system. And we understand that most of that anatomy is just for moving air. So it's only in a very microscopic little area of the alveoli where gas exchange is happening, and all of that's happening, which is absolutely necessary for life. But most of the other structures are just for moving air. So if you have a reactive airway disease, is that going to compromise your ability to move air? Yeah. And we need to know that sometimes people get misdiagnosed for asthma, but I think less than less are being misdiagnosed. How many of you have ever heard that somebody said they had asthma, but they outgrew it? Okay, well that's thought to not happen. So if you truly, really had asthma, it's you, and were diagnosed, okay, you don't outgrow it. And now the World Health Organization and CDC together combined to say that we're kind of in sort of, maybe not epidemic, but alarm states of adults being diagnosed with adult onset asthma. Does anybody know anybody who's an adult who's gotten diagnosed with adult onset asthma? You know, well, I know a few people, and here's what I'm just going to tell you right now. And this is a little preview before we get to the respiratory. Is there anybody in here with asthma? I mean, I don't want to be personal. Just if you would want to share this, thank you. So Brittany, you've been diagnosed with asthma, so you have an in-date inhaler, rescue inhaler.
They told me I outgrew it. That's what they told me. The doctor told me I outgrew it.
So you didn't really have it then. So that's what I'm telling you. That's what all the literature says now. But so you don't have a rescue inhaler with you, or do you? Okay, because anybody who's diagnosed with asthma, and a lot of people were about 2 decades ago or a decade ago, and that's a serious thing. You were obviously having some issues, but anyway, let me tell you the people that you'll see come in and die in your ER from asthma attacks. It's the mild asthmatics. The serious asthmatics are never without their rescue inhalers, never. But the ones who get told, oh, I have asthma, but I rarely have an attack or whatever, guess what? They'll step away, they'll leave their house without their rescue inhalers, and I guarantee that you've seen people who picked up having, they're in trouble. And they're in trouble quickly. It can take minutes before they've already, even if you can bring them back, they're going to have some permanent damage from it. Say it loud. I left it at home. Or they have one with them, but it hasn't worked in years. And when you look at the expiration date, it's so out of date and whatever. I remember one of the last young men I saw come in at Martha Jefferson Hospital in Charlottesville. I was doing some night work there. Was a 16-year-old, and his father brought him in. That his father was a soccer coach, and he was DOA. He was. It wasn't anything much anybody was going to be able to do, and we didn't. And the father was like, but the inhaler was at home. He hadn't used it in over a year or something. So there is no such thing as mild asthma. Asthma is a serious disease. Every single asthmatic event is a life-threatening event. It is the medical community's job to inform someone who has gotten the diagnosis of asthma the significance and importance to always never be without a rescue inhaler and understand what that means, because this reactive airway disease happens quickly because there's this influx of histamines that are going to close these airways down and cause mucus to happen, and they can't move air. And it's not like you're going to be able to put a trach in. Why wouldn't that work?
The airway's open, but it won't go actually.
Because it's down here that it's closed off. You know, when somebody's lost an airway and it's above here, then you can put a trach in. You can try to do something. But if it's low, then it's going to be an issue. It's going to be a real problem, and it only takes minutes. So keep that in mind for asthma. Now, most people can control their asthma, can't they? They can control their asthma. But what you'd like to do is to make sure that you're really proactive, and that people understand you have to be proactive, because once it gets to a point, then those attacks can become life-threatening. And sometimes even with medical treatment, if they've gotten past a certain point. So, Anaphylactic shock is also in this category because we said you can have these allergies that might cause, you know, watery eyes, you know, snotty noses, you know, running noses, running eyes, whatever. But if it's systemic, if you've got widespread histamine release, systemic means throughout the body. That's what it means, throughout the system. Whenever you hear systemic, that's just what that's talking about. So now you have bronchial constriction. You have, what is dyspnea? Does anybody know what that means? Dys means what? Difficulty. Can't breathe. So difficulty breathing, shock because your blood pressure is dropping because those capillaries have become leaky and dilated. So blood pressure is dropping quickly, and certainly EpiPen is going to really help. Now, is there a risk to EpiPen? Yes. So this is why you want to prevent this from happening, because when you give EpiPen, does it open up the airways? Sure it does. The EpiPen is epinephrine. So y'all learned that epinephrine increases all the vital signs, including respiration, because it opens the airways. So you've got to open the airways. Remember the ABCs, right? The airway, breathing, and circulation, which is all about breathing. Okay, so right. But epinephrine, what does it do to your heart rate?
Speeds it up.
Speeds it up. What is it that it can do to your blood pressure? Taking that up too, which is what you're needing to do. But it can also put you into arrhythmias, and it can put you into cardiac arrest. So EpiPens are wonderful. They're life savings for someone who has the serious type of type 1 hypersensitivities. But they're no joke medications. And when you do an EpiPen, if you have to do an EpiPen and there's no one, you're not in a medical facility, you should be at a rescue squad. I mean, if you're someplace, look, you should go to a rescue squad, immediately let them take you to the hospital after you've done the EpiPen, or get to some medical facility as soon as possible after that EpiPen is administered. Okay. That good? Y'all know? Okay. So what are some things that can cause anaphylactic shock that y'all know are really common things that can cause this systemic? Shellfish, peanuts, bee sting, certain bee stings. Some people are allergic to what else? Y'all heard this. Oh gosh, okay, yeah, so some drug reactions can be, and certainly subsequent times you get exposed are much higher. So see if this doesn't make sense to you. And this is where I think, again, education on the medical community's part. When somebody gets told that they have one of these serious allergies, the type that can take them into anaphylactic shock, the type that would require them to be prescribed with an EpiPen, make sure you also give them the information that each subsequent exposure, their response will be accelerated, because the immune system recognizes it right away, and it will be worse. Because they may be thinking in their head, oh, I could have handled that. So let them know that their body recognizes that now, and the next time that they get exposed to that, it's most likely, it's going to be a much worse attack. So they have to understand the significance of having those EpiPens. How many of you know people who have EpiPens, but they're not in date? Nobody can hear that, right? Did you say yes?
Yes. Well, she hasn't had any problem in years, like with the asthma thing, but my daughter has been cold, eating cold.
Right.
So it's not a thing to heat and cold, but she never had any kind of breathing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I sound like I want y'all to terrify people. I don't. You just educate them, let them know, and say, this is what you need to do now. This is part of your life. You just need to do it. You need to prevent what could happen by having these things with you. The second class, the type 2 hypersensitivities, are going to be transfusion-related types of problems. So those are, but can we avoid those? Huh? Yeah, we would want to be able to avoid those, right? And then this third type, this is what I want to give you a couple of examples of this, because these are things I'm going to ask you about. I want you to know of this idea that y'all told me in specific immunity, when you get exposed to a foreign antigen, you told me you're going to make antibodies, didn't you? And what you say those levels are going to do?
Increase.
They're going to
Increase.
They're going to go up. And do we think of that as being a great thing? Don't we? We think of that as being a really good thing because the antibodies are cleaning up the foreign antigens and helping to precipitate them out of your system. So that's actually a really good thing to think about. But these antibodies are proteins, aren't they, that you're making? What would happen if you were making so many of these that they were now causing problems as far as like even your kidneys? You were making so many of these antibody-antigen complexes and you're trying to get rid of them through your system, through your filters, that you start shutting your kidneys down. Is that going to be a problem? Do you think?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, if you shut your kidneys down, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, so I want you to know about a very common type 3 reaction that can happen called acute glomerulonephritis. Acute glomerulonephritis. What does acute suggest to you? It's going to happen suddenly, and is it going to be serious? Or is it going to be serious when it happens? It's going to happen quickly. It's going to be serious when it happens. And now what is happening is inflammation of the filters of the kidneys. That's what this word glomerulonephritis means. The sites where filtering of blood plasma happens in the kidneys are called glomeruli. Nephron is related to kidney functioning units. So inflammation of the filters in the kidneys. That doesn't even sound good, does it? And if that is happening, if the filters are becoming blocked, is blood being filtered? It is not being filtered. So let me tell you when we see, most often when we see acute glomerulonephritis. We most often see it post, and y'all want to know this, post streptococcal infections, specifically after strep throat. And now I want you to know the bacterium that causes strep throat. My micro people, tell me what the bacterium is that causes strep throat.
Streptococcus pyogenes.
Okay, thank y'all so much. Streptococcus. Streptococcus is the genus, isn't it? And the species name is Pyogenes. Streptococcus pyogenes is also sometimes called Group A strep. Group A strep. Group A streptococcus. Group A. So strep pyogenes causes strep throat. Now, strep pyogenes can cause other things too. And it's the body's immune system when this is causing disease, making these antibodies that can actually shut down the kidneys. Again, I've seen this. They would get referred to UVA. But I've seen this happen where little, and I say little kids, because little kids are the ones most often getting those strep throat infections. But this, and let me tell you this, how many of you have had strep throat? Is that too personal to ask? Okay, look, so a lot of us, right? More than half. And I don't know if I've ever had it, but I must have because it took my tonsils out. But I think they got me confused with Tammy. I don't think I had to get my tonsils out. Really? Seriously. Like that's a story in my family. Seriously. But anyway, I had fun. I got to go with my brother Nick. We got him out the same time. We shared with him. It was fun. So anyway, but I don't remember having sore throat. So let me say this, guys. Very common strep throat, isn't it? On a few cases of people who have sore throat, very, very rare, you're going to have some hypersensitivity issues. And really rare is acute glomerulonephritis. Some of those that have acute glomerulonephritis, it will resolve, and the kidneys will sort of heal themselves and it will get better. But some kids will lose their kidneys. They're gone. They're going to have to go on a transplant list. So would any of you all that raised your hands that you've had strep throat and you got an antibiotic when you got diagnosed with strep throat, they were not treating your throat. Guess what they were treating you for? Because, by the way, your strep throat would not have killed you. You would have gotten over it. But guess what they were treating you to try to prevent? This. That's why they treated you.
Is this like scarlet fever?
And on rare occasions, people who have strep throat or strep and another causing other infections, they can actually have scarlet fever, which can hurt the heart valves. Again, that's your immune response that's doing that damage. So when you get the antibiotic for strep throat, it is not because of your pharyngitis. Nobody cares that your throat is sore. I mean, except your mama. But guess who does? Guess what we do want to prevent? These things that can happen. They don't always happen, but they can happen. By the way, acute glomerulonephritis and rheumatic fever that are both streptococcal post-sequelae infected, problems because of the immune system, was one of the leading causes of death of kids before antibiotics. How horrible is that to think about? Because it's not part of your reality to think of that, is it? But that's the case. Go back and look at the numbers. That was the case. So, usually, if you can treat the streptococcal infection within the first 7 days, you could prevent almost all of that. How does antibiotics prevent this overreaction of the immune response? How would antibiotics do that? Antibiotics are actually working against the microorganism. What is that doing? How is that doing that? Because we know that anytime you take a chemotherapeutic, anytime you take chemicals that maybe are not therapeutic, guess what happens to your immune response? Your immune response itself is suppressed. So it suppresses the immune response. Antibiotics suppress your immune response. That's why when you give somebody an antibiotic, should you feel very comfortable that you know exactly what you are treating? Should you feel comfortable about that? Because if you are giving them an antibiotic and you do not know what you're treating, or you just, like your grandmamas will give you antibiotics from their medicine chest, won't they? Don't act like I'm making that up. Is that true? Yeah, that can be true sometimes. And they love you very much, but they don't understand that they're suppressing your immune response. So antibiotics have saved and are continuing to save so many lives. And one of the ways they save lives is actually, we understand, by preventing these sequelae events. And I want y'all to write that word down, because you might not know it. It's SEQUELLA, and sometimes you'll see an E on the end. But these sequelae events, sequelae just means sequential, right? So when you talk about sequelae diseases or sequelae event, it means what can happen next. So you have the primary thing, but it's what could potentially happen next. So for example, I'll give you another example of a sequelae. You all know about chickenpox, don't you? That's an initial viral infection that you can have. Is there a sequelae disease associated with it? What is it? Yeah, so that's what I mean when I say sequelae. Y'all can Google it. It's sequelae. SEQUELLAE. Sequelae. Okay, so you know how much I love standing up here spelling.
So it's like the second response from sickness.
It's just the thing that could happen next. It's the thing that could happen next in sequence, right? And you'll hear about sequelae infections. You'll hear about sequelae diseases that can happen. So sometimes when you're treating the initial disease, it's not so much the initial disease. That's what I'm telling you. When you get the antibiotic, when you have strep throat, are they treating your pharyngitis? No, they're treating you to prevent the what? The sequelae that can happen. Okay? All right. Systemic lupus is another one of those situations where you have such a massive immune response that it ends up damaging connective tissues. So you're damaging these connective tissues. Does anybody remember which of the 4 tissue classes is the most abundant in our body? Connective. So that can include your joints, can it? It can include those connective tissues that are supporting your organs. So, you know, this is what can happen with systemic lupus, which is the most deadly form of lupus. Okay. Type 4 are these delayed hypersensitivities. How many of you might have poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac? How many of you might have allergies to that? Is that too personal? So not too many of you. You need to get out in the woods because it would be more than you, more than the 2 of you. We just, it's just numbers would tell me that. So anyway, and by the way, you can develop these over time. So just because you hadn't been allergic to it the last time doesn't mean you might not be the next time. Let me tell you what happens with this. With this, you're going to actually have to have something that are called, these are like haptens, are going to be molecules that interact with your own personal molecules, and then after they do that, then you get the response. This is why it's delayed. This is why you don't immediately respond. It can take like hours or days later, and then you're actually having responses to it. So anyway, and those of you who know who had this little PPD tuberculosis test, y'all know that they tested at what, 72 hours. Is it still 72 hours? Yeah, that they're looking at that. So it can take a little while, but that's what they're looking for, is that response. So these are the different things that are, these are the different things that where your immune system is doing too much and it's like kind of lost its control mechanisms. Can y'all see now where maybe researching and understanding about those suppressor T cells is really important and thinking about controlling some of this? This cross-reactivity is another thing I want to talk about a little bit in autoimmune diseases. We understand that for some autoimmune diseases already, we understand how some of this is happening. Type 1 diabetes, and y'all probably know somebody who has type 1 diabetes. It used to be called juvenile onset diabetes, but the type of diabetes where their beta islet cells in their pancreas are killed by their immune system. Their immune system is destroying their beta islet cells in the pancreas. And it's the beta islet cells that produce insulin. So after enough time, is that person able to produce insulin anymore? No. And so this is a very different kind of diabetes mellitus than the type 2, isn't it? Because in type 2, you're producing plenty of insulin. But this is very different. Type 1 is autoimmune, where the immune systems destroy those beta, and y'all want to know this, destroy those beta islet cells, and no longer is insulin being produced. They're going to have to give injections of insulin. They're going to have to test their blood glucose levels dozens of times a day. Because when you give insulin, is this a serious drug that you give? It is a serious drug. Because if you give it and you don't know what you're doing or you're not monitoring it, can you get into hypoglycemic shock, insulin shock? Yes. Yes. So anyway, what we think happens is that these kids, because it is usually young, they have something that's a viral, probably viral, that never keeps them from skipping and jumping. It doesn't even make them get sick. It's just a foreign antigen that looks enough like their self-identity markers of their beta islet cells that the antibodies cross-react. So the immune system did what it was supposed to do, making the antibodies. But the antibodies are able now to cross-react with their beta islet cells. So that becomes a problem. Sometimes we know what can happen too is that even within the individual, evolution can happen with those self antigens. Remember, our immune system is not supposed to react to our own self antigens. Our immune cells are supposed to recognize our self antigens and not do anything to harm them. But if your self antigens started to change, get tweaked a little bit, now the immune system doesn't recognize them and it's going to end up destroying them. So making these autoantibodies, not a good thing. So we know this is where a lot of the autoimmune diseases actually come from. So everything we just talked about, the different types, type 1 before, these were hypersensitivities, weren't they? These are things when the immune system is doing too much. We need to calm it down. So calm it down, because this can really cause trouble. And we understand that a lot of times the signs and symptoms that somebody has of disease is not exclusively related to the pathogen or whatever's causing the disease. Sometimes the signs and symptoms are from your immune response. So we do get that. All right, now let's talk about deficiencies. Because what did we say we need to have it? Just right, right? So let's talk about deficiencies. There's a deficiency that it can be innate. It's congenital. What does congenital mean or innate? It means you're born with this, or innate. So congenital or innate. It's called SCIDS, severe combined immunodeficiency disease or syndrome. So in this, you actually don't have a functioning thymus. What did you all say these T lymphocytes, of which you all know there are quite a few different kinds now? What did y'all say that they're dependent on? T lymphocytes are called T lymphocytes because they're dependent on what endocrine gland? The thymus gland, secreting thymosins, correct? So absolutely, yeah. And if you have this, you're going to be put in a bubble. So you're not going to be able to have touch, human touch. Everything's got to be sterile. You know, so before modern day, these babies died in infancy because they couldn't fight off anything. They didn't have any specific immunity. Now there's some treatments through stem cell treatments and genetic engineering that some of these babies, and I say males because it's usually males, they can get pulled out and actually live in an environment. Certainly with conditions, but they can survive outside now. So that's pretty amazing, isn't it? All right, now we also realize that, that your book talks about it a little bit, but I would want you all to understand when we talked about the complement protein. Like, don't write this down. Just listen to me. Make sense. Everything we talked about, whether it was the ability to make interferon, the ability to make these complement proteins that we said are going to give us those 3 outcomes we talked about. If you were lacking genetic information to make complement proteins, would you be immunocompromised? Sure you would be. So it would be lesser, some of these less ones, but certainly you would be. And some people have genetically have issues where they can't make certain of these proteins. And so that would be a hypo secretion of the immune response. Now, there's also something, and I just want to tell y'all this, and it kind of like hurts my feelings, but I shouldn't take things personally. I'm going to have some of you miss this, and it's really going to make me worried, because nobody should miss this right now. AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. This is a syndrome. Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. This syndrome is caused by, in other words, its etiology is viral. It's a viral illness that causes this. Does anybody know the name of the virus, which is right behind me, I'm sure? But what does that stand for? Human immunodeficiency virus, right? So let me say this again. AIDS is a syndrome that is caused from a viral infection. It is not an autoimmune disease. I'm gonna have a couple of y'all, I just know it because every semester I do, who tells me that it's an autoimmune disease. It's not. It's a viral infectious disease. So can you transmit this to someone else? Yes. Can you transmit your autoimmune disease to someone else? No. No, you can't. They're different, aren't they? Completely different. This virus is one of the leading causes of viruses, or one of the leading causes of death to that age group, and now it's actually extending in age, but like young adult to in the 60s. Leading cause of death in the world today. I think it's number 3rd, if I would have to look that up to be sure. But one of the leading causes of death in that age group today, in the world today. That virus today, if early diagnosed, if somebody's positive for that virus, with early diagnosis and treatment, and the treatment is whatever, but with early diagnosis and treatment, people are thought now to be able to live normal lifespans with that virus now. That's a huge accomplishment, because before this last decade, this was not the case. And again, it's still one of the leading causes of death. So, this virus, does it care what color your skin is? Does it care how old you are? Does it care? You can cross the placenta. You can be 0. You can be a fetus or something. Okay, but it can. Does it care what kind of sex you're having? No, it does not. It is a virus. Do we know how it's spread? Do we know how it's spread? We do. We know how it's spread. Is it easily spread? Is it like influenza or chicken pox when somebody has a respiratory one? Those are easily spread. Measles is like wildfire. Easily spread. HIV, easily spread? No. You're going to have direct body fluid contact with, hey, listen to this. Some body fluids don't have enough of it in it that you can spread it. So can you spread it by kissing? Can you? No. Can you spread it by hugging? No. Is it in breast milk? Yes. It is in breast milk. Is it in vaginal secretions? Yes. Is it in seminal fluid? Yes. So we do know that this virus is in those places. Certainly it's in blood. So do we want to understand that that's how it's spread? It is not because of the side of the tracks you live on, or what kind of sexuality you had, or any of those reasons. In this country, do you know which group right now we're seeing the numbers go up the highest in? Y'all know which group, demographic in this country? You can check this on CDC. Do you know which CDC site? Do you know which group the numbers are increasing in faster than any other demographic? Does anybody know that? Rural, Black. No, I don't like Black. But these CDC diseases, I don't like the name because it doesn't even mean anything. Black, white, what does that mean? But anyway, rural, Black women, heterosexual women. So the reason we want to know demographics is for education, to let people understand and to be aware and to know. Anyone who's having unprotected sex is at risk. But that particular group, we're seeing the numbers going up higher than any other group. When you first get infected with HIV, are you symptomatic? When you if you've had a behavior that could have put you at risk for encountering this virus, are you initially symptomatic? No. You can, some people, when they look back retrospectively, they'll think, well, in March, I did have like what I thought was the flu, but I never, the flu test was negative. So some people will have memory that, but most don't. So no, you won't get a sign of that. It's just that if there's any sort of behavior that happens that could be at-risk behavior, that you would be a responsible mature adult and get tested. Now, is the testing going to be definitive immediately? No. So again, the testing can be paused for a few weeks or months. So you would have to make sure that you would be from that date that you would be tested later to be sure. By the way, when you're testing negative and you might be positive, could you still be spreading it to someone else? Are you still contagious? Yes. So this is the real information about this. This particular disease, is an infectious disease, right? Lots of stuff, lots of research is going on with this now. I'd like to say the United States led it. It didn't. The United States was way behind in helping with this. But anyway, a lot's being discovered that we do know with proper proactive treatment, if somebody's status is positive, that they can live relatively normal lifespans. Does anybody die from the HIV virus? No. They die because their T4 cell counts, the CD4 cell counts, the helper T, those are all the same name with the same cell. Helper T's are called what? TD4, T4 cells, T lymphocyte 4 cells. They start going down in numbers. And when they do, what happens to your specific immunity? It collapses. And then you start getting what? Opportunistic diseases, right? Opportunistic diseases. So that's the issue with that, is that that's what happens. So just to make sure people understand what it is, and there's no stigma, there shouldn't be stigma attached with this. It was for so long, stigma attached with this disease through lack of education. But there shouldn't be stigma attached with sexually transmitted diseases, because that's how we all got here, So that's like a normal thing. And anytime there's stigma attached with, because of whatever reasons, religion, whatever reasons, it might be fear, whatever the stigmas are from, it's usually lack of education. And whenever there's stigma, it encourages the spread. It's just like a barrier that encourages us to help to stop preventing, getting information out there to stop preventing the spread of disease. Right? Anybody want to add anything to that? So what ends up happening is that you get these opportunistic infections that you never see in anybody else. So you've got these patients coming into you that have, instead of like viral pneumonia, which most of the community, they have pneumonia, and that viral pneumonia, or heaven forbid, one of the other bacterial ones, but they come in with a fungal pneumonia, like nobody gets, called pneumocystis pneumonia. And that nobody gets that has a strong immune system. They just don't. Late stage cancer patients, you get that, and AIDS patients. And then they end up getting encephalitis from viruses that end up being able to breach their central nervous system, cause inflammation in the brain or meninges. And, that might be the last thing that takes them out. Or they get this Kaposi sarcoma, which is a cancer that we just don't see except for there's this rare ethnic population that we see it in that's kind of really genetically predisposes them, or AIDS patients. That's the only patients we see this in. And so, they end up dying from things that they just really shouldn't, that are opportunistic diseases because their immune system is so compromised. That's if they're not being treated, but they can be treated. With positive status, you can be treated. And we said, is it really easy to transfer this? No, it's not easy to transfer this. This is not an easy transmission at all. So people need to understand. Now, there's some ways that are more easily transmitted than others. And again, that's through information that you would understand that. By the way, is oral sex? Yes, and the mouth, is there tons of vascularization in the mouth? Yes, so that can be, oral sex is sex. I was a little shocked a couple of years ago. I had a few students in a class that was telling me that in middle school that people thought they were virgins if they just hadn't had vaginal intercourse, but they were having oral. And I was like, okay, that requires education and understanding that no, that's sex too. So absolutely, just to understand certain ways, and certainly anal intercourse, that the anus truly is not really designed for that. The vagina is absolutely designed for the for intercourse, and because of the secretions and whatnot, there's less membrane tearing, because the vagina is really a birth canal, a mature vagina. It's a birth canal, and it's designed for that, and usually there's not trauma for that. But the anus is not. And so the anus has more microscopic membranous tearing if that happens. And so this is why we did, in this country, we saw it first in the male homosexual population first, because of that particular fact. We also know that in Africa, that population, just some cultures, some tribal areas were just devastated by this, but it was in the heterosexual population first. But the women, what they found out when they went in, medical anthropologists went in just to see, like, why is it so much easier spread heterosexually in these African regions and Mediterranean regions than it is in our country? Do you know what they found out? You know what they found out? I thought this was genius. Like it was just a genius observation. Sad, but genius observation. You know what they found out? That in these cultures, women were not having foreplay. So sex was happening, but there was no foreplay. And so if there's no foreplay, guess what's happening? More microscopic tearing of the vaginal tissues. So, and in developed countries, women, I guess, were having more, hey ladies, demand foreplay, okay? That's what I'm saying. So, but no, do you see what I'm saying? So this is what it absolutely was why it just went through entire populations, and it was because of that practice. So guess what they started? Guess what they started campaigning for with African women? Explaining that and explaining how important that was, but not just African women, but also to the African men, to let them know that. Okay. Y'all don't have any questions for me? Okay. All right, look, I could start the respiratory. Do y'all want me to start the respiratory? What'd you say? Might as well, Janet said. I like that attitude. Any questions for me about the lymphatic system, though? Any questions for me about the lymphatic system? Nope. Okay. Just with the HIV status thing, you could go online and look at these counties: Charlotte, Prince Edward, Halifax, Brunswick. These counties, the numbers are really going up. So, so you could look at that. What'd you say? What?
You just didn't say our county, so it makes you feel good.
No, I just like named a few of them around, but you can look at those too.
Oh, it's there.
It's there.
It's there.
Oh, it is. I was just thinking of some of the ones that I know just were brought to my attention. Prince Edward and Halifax are two that are truly ones that I recently looked at. It was a little bit surprising. Okay, so all right, guys. So the respiratory system. Why are you breathing at the rate you're breathing? I'll just do a little introduction here. But why are you breathing at the rate you're breathing? You all have you have a ventilation. I want you all to know that ventilation rate. You ready for this? Ventilation rate. This is meaning how many times you breathe in and how many times you breathe out. Yeah, I know people call it respiration rate, but it's also ventilation rate. Okay. How many, a normal adult at rest can be anywhere from 12 of those to 20. Now we usually see like 16 to 20, or whatever, right? But anyway, it can be anywhere from 12, breathing in, breathing out, to 20. A minute. Okay, so that's your ventilation rate. Why are you breathing at the rate you're breathing? When you first walked in and sat down this morning for about 5 minutes, somebody could have measured that. And by the way, you always don't want to let somebody know you're doing that, because when somebody knows that you're checking how many times they're breathing in and out, guess what they become? Breathless. So don't you become breathless just talking about it? Like maybe that's just me. but you usually don't say, okay, I'm going to check your ventilation rate now. You know, so you're just trying to make them be relaxed about it. But it changes because we know we've in this negative feedback. So what's influencing that? Why are you breathing? Why is your ventilation rate the rate it is right this second? Why? So we know you're kind of going up and down and up and down and up and down. And central nervous system is controlling that, setting the set point, you control it. Knowing when you get too high, it's going to bring it back in. But why?
The amount of carbon dioxide your body needs to expel. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Did y'all hear what Dylan said? Dylan said it's the amount of carbon dioxide your body's trying to get rid of at any given time. Why are you trying to get rid of carbon dioxide? Where are you getting carbon dioxide from?
From your cells.
Yes.
It's a byproduct from the cells. I'm saying it louder because I don't think they can hear you. So it's a byproduct from the cells from what?
From use.
Respiration.
To get the ATP. To get ATP, you had to bring in glucose and oxygen. But what did you give off? Carbon dioxide and water. So you got this. It's just proof that your cells are alive. You've got this carbon dioxide that your cells are pumping out. Well, you better have a way to get rid of it. Is that right? Is that right? And if that actually is right. But here's what I'd like to also introduce you to, is this is the main thing. And I want you to hear this because it sounds like I'm splitting hairs a little bit. But this is the main thing. And actually, I will go ahead and show you something. I want you all to write down CO2 plus H2O. Are y'all write that down? They're reactants this time. They're on the left side of the arrow. So CO2 plus H2O. Y'all all know what it means, don't you? CO2 plus H2O. Are you kidding me? Where is this? And why would it be this far away? All right. So I'm just going to put this up here just so you'd be able to see it, this equation. So y'all are saying that if it's on this side, they're called reactants. So now we're thinking about those products that the cells are pumping out, CO2 and H2O. And I want you to write an arrow going toward the right. I want you to write an arrow. And then I want you to write H2CO3. And I want you to know that that's carbonic acid. That's carbonic acid. And then I want you to write a little arrow from carbonic acid. And I want you to write, in case you can't see this, HCO3 anion. It's a little anion. You see that negative sign there? So that molecule, this molecule of HCO3 anion, this molecule is bicarbonate. That's bicarbonate. Plus a hydrogen ion. Y'all see that? Did everybody write that equation? This is one of, I told you you only have to know a few equations for me. This is one of them. You had to know aerobic respiration, didn't you? You had to know glucose plus oxygen, and there was an arrow. You would get CO2 and water. Remember that? But where did I tell you the important thing was happening? In the arrow, right? Because we said the arrow is always a story. Inside the arrow is a story. And you want to know, wouldn't chemistry be boring if you were just looking at this? But you have to understand that there's arrows, there's a story there. And in aerobic respiration, the story is that inside of a cell, if you've got glucose and oxygen, inside a cell, you're getting tons of what? ATP. And then what are you giving off? True. What are you giving off? CO2 and water. And this equation, I want you to know that you're thinking about the CO2 and water now, that your cells are giving off. Because, right, all your cells are working. Aren't your cells alive? Your cells are working. They're all alive. So they're putting this out. And now you got an arrow here to carbonic acid. And then another arrow to bicarbonate and hydrogen ions. So let me tell you about these arrows. These arrows are the story and understanding. It takes enzymes for this to happen. And it's happening really quickly. It's the body's mechanism of controlling that CO2 that's coming into the system. Because CO2 is being pumped from every one of your cells. It is. And so a way to handle that is by converting it first to carbonic acid. Does it sound like it would be a good thing if we just ended the story right there? If our cells were to end the story on carbonic acid, does that sound like that would be a good thing? Does it? Have you ever seen carbonic acid? Like, you wouldn't want that staying around. But our cells, if we can convert this, our bodies can convert this in the extracellular fluids. We can convert it to a very kind of whatever product, bicarbonate. This is an anion. So when we think about these ions, whether they're negatively charged anions or positively charged cations, do we know that they actually help with electricity in our system? That they actually help as these electrolytes that work in our system, right? Now I want to remind you all of something. I want to remind you all of, it was going to be really related right to this. I really was kind of just like related, right? You need it, wait a minute. Shoot. Oh, I want to remind you all of what is the weakest but the most important physiological chemical bond that we have. Hydrogen bonds? Why do you say that? Because hydrogen bonds are holding what in the shapes that we know must be maintained for their functions. Would you say? Our nucleic acids, like DNA, and how we go from DNA to proteins. Remember, transcription and translation, and those bonds that make the messenger RNA, and the messenger RNA codes for the chain, the initial chain of amino acids. Remember that? That took the law of complementary base pairing of those bases, but those were hydrogen bonds. Were they strong? No, they were weak. They were ready. They were ready to be done, but also ready to be moving and doing the next steps and going this way. How about your proteins? Proteins are made from amino acids getting in chains, but then they form these curls or they form these folds, and then they fold on themselves. And what holds that shape of your protein? Hydrogen bonds. Peptide bonds hold the amino acids together. Peptide bonds hold the amino acids together. But then how those amino acids arrange themselves, like a ringlet or a fold, that's hydrogen bonding. And a protein's function is completely determined by its what? Its shape, its structure. So those hydrogen bonds holding your proteins, which are really miraculous, are proteins. The hydrogen bonds that are in it. So what we really know is there's something that we talked about at length in AMP 1. We talked about at length that we better have this balanced. Do y'all remember us talking about that being balanced? What did we call that knowing? What did we know? What's that called? What's the measurement of that called? The measurement of that is called pH, isn't it? pH is equal to the negative log of the concentration of the hydrogen ion. Isn't that right? Do y'all remember that definition? If you didn't, write it down again. Can you forget anything we had in AMP1? Should you be forgetting anything we had in AMP1? No. So what you all are telling me, what Dylan told me, is that maybe we're not breathing to get in oxygen. Maybe we're breathing to control this, but actually, Dylan, when we produce this, this is immediately converted to these two things. And so what we're really doing, we understand, is trying to control this. You all said that how much you have of this hydrogen ion is your pH level. Is that right? So what did you all tell me the scale is for pH? 0 to what? 0 to 14. And what did you tell me is neutral? 7. So that meant you had equal numbers of hydrogen ions to OH anions. Isn't that what you said? But you also said, y'all remember this? Everybody's remembered this, right? But you also told me that this scale is because this says negative log, this scale is inversely proportional. So it means that the lower you go on the scale, what's happening to your hydrogen ions? They're actually doing what?
Increase.
And the lower, and the higher you're going on the scale, 8, 9, 10, all up, what's happening to hydrogen ions? They're actually decreasing. I hope I said that right. Was I saying that right? Okay. So anyway, so this is all, the pH scale is all about how much of this do you have? How much of this do you have? Right? And that's what the pH scale was. We said that log meant, we see what this meant. Now to say log, what log meant was that one number change was actually how much of a change? 10 times. 10 times, right? So if this was 6, from 7 to 6, you actually have 10 times more hydrogen. From 7 to 5, how many more times hydrogen? 100 times. That's what logarithmic means. That's what logarithmic. If you went from 7 to 4, how many more times? 1,000 times more hydrogen. So is a slight change on the scale actually potentially a significant difference in hydrogen ions?
Yeah.
So what did I tell you most of your body fluids need to be at? 7 point what? To what? 7.45. Y'all need to remember that? Y'all are about done and I don't have labs, so y'all can hang on for a minute, okay? Then some of you are free to go. Some of you are micro. So anyway, but y'all told me that blood and most of your body fluids, except for a few, most of them need to be about this. That's their normal pH range. Is that what you said? All right. So, but what would tell me what would happen? Tell me what would happen. Tell me what would happen, Dylan, is if your respirations were low, though, if your respiration's low, CO2 is building up in your system because your respiration's kind of low. And if it's building up in your system, what is increasing in your system? And what's happening to your pH?
Becoming more acidic.
Yeah, because y'all remembered that this, if it's getting lower, it's becoming more acidic, right? Where if it's getting higher, it's becoming alkaline. So you're saying when your ventilation rate is slow, that you're building up the CO2, but what the real problem is that you're getting too many of these. Is that what you said? And you're becoming acidic. But that's okay, because our central nervous system is going to pick up on that, and our central nervous system is going to tell our respiratory system to start breathing faster. And when you start breathing faster, do you understand that then this would be going this way? And guess what you're getting rid of? You're getting rid of the carbon dioxide. So your breathing is slowing down. It's slowing down when you need to have more of this, and it's speeding up when you need to get rid of this. Does that make sense? So it's really your pH balance of, and it's actually of your cerebrospinal fluid, that's controlling your ventilation rates. Let me say that again. The main reason you are breathing is to keep your pH in homeostasis. Your respiratory system is one of them. It's a whole entire organ system that is predominantly, its function is to keep you in pH balance, which means that your respiratory system is a buffer. Because what did we say a buffer is? What's a buffer? Anything that helps you to resist changes in pH, to keep you in balance. That's what a buffer is, isn't it? All right. Does that make sense to you? You all also told me one of the reasons you have to know how much of this you're dealing with, the concentrate. Remember, brackets means concentration. That's what they mean in chemistry. Is that you said inside of your cells, this is a cell. Doesn't it look like one? Okay. You said inside of your cells, you have electrolytes inside your cells, and outside your cells, you have electrolytes too. Outside your cells, what's your predominant positive ions? Did somebody said sodium? Do y'all believe her? Do y'all believe it was sodium? Huh? Inside your cell, what's the predominant electrolyte? Y'all are great. Okay, so potassium, y'all remember that? And you know that it's so important that half the calories you use in a day, y'all listen to this, half the calories that you're expending in a day are going for little protein pumps that are pumping sodium out and keeping what in? Pushing against the gradient, sodium. Those pumps are working in every one of your cells to keep a resting potential on your cells, keeping that sodium out, keeping potassium in. Are we good with that? Because your cells are alive. That sounds like that, whatever, but your cells are alive. But what has hydrogen got to do with it? What has hydrogen got to do with how that balance is this? If you've got too many of these little ions, which you all might remember is hydrogen has the atomic number of 1. And it means that it's lost its electron, hasn't it? So it's just a little tiny proton. Let's think of this thing for what it looks like. It's this little tiny, tiny proton. And if you've got a ton of them increasing out here, their numbers are going up because you're acidic. You're becoming acidic. These little guys, guess what they can do? They can go through your membrane, diffuse down their concentration gradient, going right into your cells if you're acidic. If you're acidic and they're going into your cells, do you think potassium's just going to say welcome? Or what's potassium going to do? Why? Why?
It's too much in it.
No, that won't be the reason. What'd you say? Because I told you, no, that's never the reason. That's never the reason, please. No, but thanks for saying that. But no, it's because this has a positive charge. And what has a positive charge? And what do positive charges do to each other? So if this is pouring in, what's going to end up pouring out? And this becomes the problem. This becomes the serious problem as it pours out. Because what have you all always heard is the most dangerous electrolyte imbalance? Why? Because it can cause your heart to stop. And it causes it is the most dangerous electrolyte imbalance is potassium. And y'all just told me that pH has a direct role keeping pH balance. And you just told me pH balance means you know how much of this you have. And you just told me that if you have too much, you can just simply increase your respiration to get rid of it, blow CO2 out. But if you don't have enough, what can you do with your respirations? Just what? Slow them down. And if they slow down, this starts to build up and you get more of this. Do you get what I mean? This is actually kind of beautiful. If you didn't sense that, I didn't do my part. I'm telling you the story. Do you have any questions for me? This is the main stimulus. So before you put away your notebooks, let me just tell you one other thing. It is the main stimulus, pH balance. CO2 is next and doing that, but that's directly related, isn't it? But let me say this. Guess when oxygen will take over and become the main stimulus? Is when oxygen's being impeded. And how can it be impeded? Well, sometimes you can get your nose and mouth covered up. How long will you last? At the most, you're going to be lucky if you're not having permanent brain damage after 4 to 6 minutes, right? You're getting permanent loss if you get to come back at all. So oxygen becomes the major stimulus when you can't move. Then if it does take over and it becomes the main stimulus. But in us sitting here, our stimulus is to maintain pH balance. And then, that is indirectly maintaining CO2, what Dylan said, he's right about that. But if we have a problem moving air, then oxygen becomes the stimulus. How about people with COPD? What do you think their stimulus is? Oxygen. Yeah, exactly. People with pneumonia. People who have had a drowning event. Right? So people who've had any sort of issue with that, can't move in air for whatever reason, then oxygen does become a major stimulus. Okay, I hope that excited you to learn about the respiratory system. What you just saw right there is probably the most difficult part. Are you gonna have a cruise when you come back? Hey guys, I'll have a grace-free break. You deserve it. What is what? Oh, I have been as well. I didn't know they were anxious. It's one of those little, it's a little line that has to be present with the so that's why it says this added step becomes and because join is what some people don't that's the delayed action. But isn't that
So let me turn on the recording, just in case we say something we should.